is just a shortening of my actual name, just first, middle, and last name, just shortening of that. And so this is my first time ever recording a podcast. It's something that I've kind of wanted to do for a while, but I never really got around to doing. I don't really have stuff to do it, which I think I talk about later. This is just an intro that I'm kind of recording in retrospect. That I already recorded the actual podcast. I just kind of decided to do a little bit of an intro thing. So yeah, I'm just using a microphone on a gaming headset for now, but I'll definitely invest in a better microphone if I want to continue doing this. I think it went okay for my first one. I basically just talked. I had nothing prepared. I think I'm just kind of doing this to practice and get used to talking in this type of way, because it's really weird to me right now just to be talking into a microphone about whatever I want. I'm mainly practicing so I can kind of get better at doing it, because I'm looking forward to doing it with my friend on a podcast that we are kind of creating together, which will be about sports in general, probably mainly NBA, because that's the thing that we talk about most together, because that's mostly what I focus on. I think I'll describe that a little bit later. But yeah, that intro song, I'll probably end up changing at one point, making better. I just literally downloaded a free trial of Mixcraft and made that in 10 minutes just now. So this is a Saturday, July 18th. I just woke up and decided, hey, this is what I'm going to do today. It's something that I have been putting off for a while, and I just did it. So yeah, hopefully the one or two people that listen to this end up kind of liking it and don't just lie to me and tell me that they liked it to support me or something. But I mean, that's cool too. Support is awesome, but whatever. I think I'm going to speed this up too. I did speed up the podcast that I did just because there was, a couple parts where I'm just like, like have a little breaks in between things I'm saying. And also that's how I usually like to listen to long form podcasts, typically anyways, is on like 1.25 speed. And so that's what I did. I just sped it up 25%. Also, my recording software I'm using is Audacity. So definitely not anything special, but I guess it gets the job done, and I'm familiar with it. I know how to use it. It's free. So yeah, I think it'll do what it needs to do. I think I'm going to put this up on YouTube here in a second. So if you're listening to this, that's probably where you are listening to it. So yeah, I guess that's my intro, and I guess enjoy what is coming up next. Hello, world. So I'm trying out this podcast thing. I'm just talking to myself in my living room on my wife's laptop. And yeah, so here we go. I've been wanting to do podcasts with my buddy Jacob Roth. He has the Jacob Roth Show podcast, and he's converting it into the Next Man Up podcast is what he's going to start a channel for on YouTube. And just so I can get a little bit more used to talking in a microphone about sports and whatever, I decided to just kind of start doing little test runs that will probably go nowhere. Might put them up online, might not. I don't know. I doubt very many people will listen to this, but I guess it's just to practice a little bit, get myself used to talking, doing things like this, because it's pretty foreign to me at this point. But hopefully this microphone is okay. I am not really set up with the gear to really do a very high-end podcast. I just have some Corsair headphones. It's a gaming headset, with a little mic on it. I don't know how good this is going to sound in comparison to some other things, but probably not very good. So a little bit about myself. My name's Logan. I'm a Denver Nuggets fan. I focus primarily on NBA, primarily basketball, but even more primarily NBA. I'm a Nuggets fan, even though I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, grew up around Lincoln. We never have had a sports team, a professional sports team around here, unless you count the Lincoln Salt Dogs, which is a minor league baseball team, but most people don't. I think there's a minor league hockey team as well, the Lincoln Stars, but not really big into hockey. Not opposed to it, though. I might get into it more, because my friend Jacob, he's he's a very multi-sport type of guy. He focuses on a lot of them. So his knowledge is more of like a mile wide. Mine is more of a mile deep in basketball. So when I'm on my own, I'm probably only going to be talking about basketball or movies or, other things I care about. I don't know how focused it's going to be, how, central I'm going to keep topics and stuff. I guess we're just going to find out. And I'm sure nobody's going to listen to this. Maybe as I get better at doing stuff, I'll, give another one of my own backstory things that people will actually listen to. And I'm a Nuggets fan because when I was really young, I asked my dad, because I liked basketball. I've always liked basketball, and I asked my dad, like, hey, we don't have a pro team here, but what's the closest NBA team to us here in Lincoln? And that was when I was really young, so that was before OKC was a team and was moved from Seattle. So he said, oh, well, probably the Denver Nuggets. And so then they've just been my team ever since, which I think that Minnesota Timberwolves, Minneapolis, is just as far, or if not, maybe even closer. But OKC is definitely closer than Denver from Lincoln. So they're no longer the closest to me, and they might have not even been the closest at the time. But that's just the team I ended up with. I've just been a fan ever since. So back then, when I became a fan, was, the early days of Carmelo Anthony as a Denver Nugget, and also around the time, Allen Iverson came to the Denver Nuggets in '06, '07, I believe, somewhere in there. Those boys, those were some of my favorite teams. But I think the most sentimental and like the most memorable Denver Nuggets team to me as a child was the '09 Western Conference Finals team, which was Melo and Chauncey Billups and J.R. Smith and Nene, Kenyon Martin, Birdman, I believe was still there. All those guys. Al Harrington, I think, was there also. Those are my guys. And because I loved the Nuggets so much, Carmelo was like above and beyond my favorite player in the world. He was like, to me, I was always like, I wanted him to just be better than LeBron all the time. I knew that, deep down, I probably knew that that would never really happen. But that was just always what I wanted. And because of Carmelo is actually why I have the favorite college basketball team that I do, which is Syracuse. And I've liked Syracuse ever since, really, not too long after I started liking the Nuggets because of Melo. And yes, Lincoln does have a college basketball team, Nebraska Cornhuskers, but we have been pretty awful for a long time, really hard to cheer for, especially when we were in the Big 12, and we were just getting destroyed by Kansas every single year. But now that we're in the Big 10, it's not much better. But we did have a couple pretty good years recently. Not bad, for our standards especially. So I did, I was going to Nebraska basketball games the past couple of years, especially because my brother-in-law actually played on the team, and so we got tickets to go a lot. So yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan of Nebraska Cornhuskers as well. If the Cornhuskers played Syracuse in the national championship somehow, if that were to happen, which will not happen for, but neither of those teams are probably going to make it to the national championship anytime soon. But if that happened, I would be pretty torn, just because I've loved Syracuse a lot for quite a while, especially if Coach Boeheim was still there. I'd probably be cheering for the Syracuse side just because I want Boeheim to get another national championship. But yeah, it'd probably depend on a number of factors. But also my favorite Syracuse team was my freshman year of high school, which was, I think, it would have been the 2014 season, 2013-14. That was the season that Syracuse went like 20-something-0, started off, and then lost like 4 of the last 6 games of the season or something like that. Something like completely train wreck after going undefeated like the whole season and was ranked number 1 for 8 or 9 straight weeks, something like that. And then we lost in either the first or second round to Dayton. Yeah, that was it's funny that I bring that up as my favorite Syracuse team memory because it ended up being rather disappointing, but it still was. Just looking back in the regular season, man, that team was so good. I really miss watching those guys. Tyler Ennis at point guard, he was a freshman. He went to the NBA and really his career did not pan out at all. I really wish that he would have stayed. Same with Tyler Lydon. He left early. I don't think Tyler Lydon was on that team actually though. I think he came later. But that team was definitely like Tyler Ennis, Trevor Cooney, one of the best three-point shooters in ACC history. CJ Fair, Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant actually did turn out to be a NBA player, and he's on the Nuggets now. So he's definitely been in. I've been a fan of him for a while now. But Rakeem Christmas was on that team. DeJuan Coleman, but he was injured like the entire season. Yeah, Tyler Roberson was a good team. But yeah, so I guess we're gonna start talking off about the bubble because today is July 18th, 2020. So the NBA bubble is coming back in Disney World. Sounds like most of the players are all there with their teams. There are some teams with some missing players, and also there's some teams that we don't know. There's not any confirmation on which players are there, which players aren't. I think it's unclear with some things, but it's all been a pretty weird and wild situation. But yeah, going into this, obviously, I'm rooting for the Nuggets to do the best they can. Really want a conference finals appearance. It would be awesome. I know it's a long shot because you got to go through the Clippers to get there. And if somehow we fall to the 4th seed in this regular season, 8-game regular season, we'd have to go through the Lakers instead of the Clippers. So either way, we're going to have to go through one of the LA teams, which is not going to be an easy feat, obviously. I think I'd honestly rather go through the Lakers than the Clippers, just for matchup purposes. Unless, I guess, Clippers, they got Montrezl Harrell, but I feel like Jokic could probably... Like, Harrell's a big boy, don't get me wrong. He's beefy, and he's got a lot of energy. And also, Jokic is skinny now, so I don't know how that's going to end up, but how that would end up. And hopefully we make it out of the first round, because right now, if the season ended today, if the playoffs started today, we would be playing the Rockets, first round, 3-6 matchup. And I'm pretty confident about that series. I know that a lot of people look at the Rockets and they're a pretty high variation team. Like, nobody would be surprised if the Rockets lost in the first round. I'm sure nobody would really be surprised, but also nobody would really be that surprised if they made it to the conference finals. Uh, Maybe a little bit more surprised for the conference finals thing than losing the first round, but it really isn't that much of a long shot. Just how the Rockets play. One game they could lose really badly because they shot 11 of 40 from three. And the next game they shoot 22 of 41 from three, and they win by a good margin. They're a very high variance team with that kind of thing, and also a little bit unpredictable just because the micro ball stuff is something that we don't really have a big sample size for. So we don't know how, and we also have no sample size for it in a playoff series at all. So it's going to be an interesting one. But I'm pretty confident in Jokic's ability to kind of eat up PJ Tucker or Covington or whoever they have on him down in the post. And it's interesting to me because the Rockets, their big thing with how they get it done, even though they don't have any centers on the defensive end, they with the big guys that they have been guarding, like AD and Gobert and people like that, when they get them inside, they usually will kind of swarm them, like have like a little bit of a double team action type thing. And Jokic is probably the number one post player in the league you don't want to do that to, just because he can hurt you even more with a double team than he can one on one. Unless he's going one-on-one against PJ Tucker, in which case he might be able to score 75% of the time, and then you might, and then you're trying to pick the lesser of two evils with him. You're trying to see, how much is he hurting you when you double team him versus when you just leave him to post up PJ Tucker or, whoever. So that's going to be interesting. Hopefully Jamal Murray shows up. Last playoffs, he didn't play horrible. Like, he actually played pretty well. But with him, it's kind of like, I feel like most Nuggets fans at least, tend to remember the moments where he's really hot and he's making everything, late in games, which is, don't get me wrong, great to have. But a lot of times I'm remembering times where he's just awful. He's not making anything and he's taking shots over and over. Which is, I guess a good thing, you don't want to lose confidence and stuff, but sometimes the shot selection when he's not making them is kind of aggravating. And so he's a very, I don't know how I want to say this, like J.R. Smithy type of heat check offensive player, which, you love him when he's there, and it's awful when he's not, That's just kind of how it goes with him. I feel like maybe he can rewrite the script this season, or this postseason, by maybe being there a little bit more consistently. Yeah, I feel like he's just kind of been a wild card at this point in his career, but so far. And defensively, I don't think it's a lack of effort. It seems like he does really try sometimes, like he's putting forth effort, but, a lot of times he gets caught getting burned, on the defensive end. I think advanced metrics really don't like him on that end either, but we'll see. Hopefully, so in a game against the Rockets, he would probably be guarding like Eric Gordon, maybe, or is Eric Gordon out? It's been so long since the season has been happening. I don't even remember if Eric Gordon is injured or not. Let me look this up really quick, because I vaguely remember him getting injured and having but it's been 4 months, so in all likelihood he's probably fine now. But Eric Gordon injury. Okay, in November of 2019, so really early this season, he had right knee surgery. He was out 6 weeks. I don't know if there's been anything since then, though. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess we'll find out, but definitely be putting because Gary Harris and Torrey Craig are definitely our two best perimeter defenders on our team, on the Denver Nuggets, and I'd say that we'd want to put one of them on both Russ and Harden. Probably Gary, just because he's a little bit shorter and more compact. Gary Harris is, I think, a better post defender than Torrey Craig, and that's what you're going to be looking for a little bit more with Russell Westbrook. You want to stay in front of him, number one, which I think Gary Harris is already a little bit better than Craig at, just staying in front. And number two, hold your own inside. And I think that Gary Harris is probably a better option to put on Russ. Torrey Craig, he's a really good defender. He's a spotty three-point shooter, so on the offensive end, he definitely is a negative versus what we could have out there, like Will Barton or somebody to have out there instead. But just what he provides on the defensive end of the floor is really valuable to us a lot of times, and I get that. That's why a lot of times we'll have him in our starting lineup, because I think we just give up. Malone thinks we give up too much on the defensive end when we have a starting lineup of Murray, Harris, Barton, Millsap, and Jokic. Because Millsap, he can guard most fours, but in today's game and also at his age, he cannot guard the modern four. Because what is the modern four? It's a very random position. He can guard. He's a good post defender for players at his size are not much taller. Him guarding a 7-footer is a little bit undesirable, but he can hold his own, I guess. But him staying in front of a matchup that I can easily recall. One of the first games of the season was against New Orleans, and Brandon Ingram was his assignment, and just about every single play, with B.I. getting the ball, he would just just take off, blow right by him. I think Paul Millsap's just not very quick on his feet anymore to stay in front of quicker slashing guards, which that's basically what Brandon Ingram is. He's a slashing guard who's playing four, which is pretty interesting, just where the game is going. But Harris would really be the only lockdown defender in that starting five, and I think sometimes depending on the matchup, which is I'm glad that I have the team that I do cheer for pretty deep, a lot of different interchangeable parts, a lot of different lineups we can go with. Monte Morris, I think, is a really underrated backup point guard off the bench. I love me some Monte Morris. Will Barton, I think he is best utilized as a sixth man sometimes. I think he kind of does fit that mold of like a Jamal Crawford or Lou Williams sometimes. Heat plug off the bench scorer, but he also, I don't know, he's just one of my favorite players on the team. He seems to be, he's kind of like a little bit like Jamal Murray in the sense that he's kind of a heat check kind of guy, but I think he's just, especially at his age, I think maybe he's just a bit more consistent, a bit more grounded in, the type of player that he's developed into. I'm just a big Will Barton fan. I like Will Barton. Jeremy Grant, I know we talked about him a little bit earlier. He's also a great defensive player that we have on our team. Can run the floor. I think that's another really big advantage that we'd have against the Rockets in a first round series. Like, we have defenders that can run the floor with them, especially Jeremy Grant, Torrey Craig, Gary Harris. Those guys can get up and down the floor quick. Which is, what you're going to need to stop with the Rockets, because them playing micro ball, them having Russell Westbrook as point guard, one of the fastest point guards in NBA history, even at his age, one of the fastest point guards in the league. I think that's going to come in handy for sure. And then Jokic just preventing them from getting defensive rebounds, as many as they normally would, with a Capella or even a Chandler out there, I think that rebounding advantage, and then also when they do get the defensive rebound, having a Grant or a Craig or Harris or all three out there to be able to run the floor in transition would be ideal. Yeah, and then just in the half court, having Harris on Russ and Craig on Harden, I think is not a terrible situation. I know that both of those guys are going to get their stats, get their points, but hopefully be able to contain them to an extent in the sense of winning a playoff game. So yeah, that was a little bit of a breakdown of Nuggets Rockets series from Nuggets point of view. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to do that very often. I know I've kind of started off really like, only talking about Nuggets, only talking from the point of view of a Nuggets fan, but I feel like doing podcasts, I'm not going to do that as much. I know I probably seem like I care way more about the Nuggets than I actually do. That's weird to say. I do care about the Nuggets a lot, but I don't. I do know I probably know the most about the Nuggets, that's for sure. But I do know a lot about other teams too, and I'll be able to do deep dives on other teams and other playoff matchups. I guess just doing my first episode, it felt natural to talk about Nuggets, but yeah, I know that nobody's probably listening to this anyways to have this sort of interpretation of what I've been saying, but just thought I'd clarify. Something that, also to give a little bit more of my background, I've been the past year and a half, 2 years now, I'm getting a lot more into the NBA than I have been. Before, I was just kind of like a 2K fan, you know what I mean, when I was younger. Like, I watched the playoffs, and I watched my Nuggets when they were on, but, like, everything I knew, basically, about the league came from 2K. Like, all the players' names, stories, a lot of that stuff the announcers would say in games, a lot of my knowledge of the league was from 2K. The past couple years, though, I've been listening, ever since I graduated college, and even while I was in college a little bit, I started listening to podcasts, which was something I never used to do. But the past couple years, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and my favorite things to listen to are like Bill Simmons podcasts, The Ringer NBA Show, The Low Post with Zach Lowe, The Woj Pod, Brian Windhorst and Hoop Collective, some of those. And I recently just started listening to a little bit of Chris Haynes' podcast as well. I listen to a lot of that stuff, watch a lot of YouTube videos too. Definitely listen to podcasts every day, basketball podcasts. So I've gotten a lot more into like the history of basketball than I used to. So one thing I saw a couple weeks ago on Instagram, there was this post about the Knicks, about Knicks fans and how, horrible the past 20 years have been for Knicks fans. Oh, I should interject in there a little bit. I was kind of, since, you now know, I was a big Melo fan. I was a Nuggets fan first, but, Melo fan second. So I did kind of follow Melo to the Knicks. I never liked the Knicks more than the Nuggets, obviously, but the Knicks were kind of like my second favorite team with Melo there. So I was rooting for them too, especially because, opposite conferences and all. I do have a little bit, familiarity with being a Knicks fan. I know that I was only there for probably the highlight of the past 20 years, but it still was a little aggravating, that team being less than what it could have been and everything. But, I definitely do understand the Knicks pain, not just from, being a Knicks fan, but just knowing from what, the Knicks organization and what Dolan has been up to the past 20 years, I understand the Knicks fan point of view, how awful and aggravating these years have been. Totally understand. But so on this post though, I can't remember. So this person comments and says, talking back to a guy that's a Knicks fan, and he's like, "Yo, I don't understand how you guys can still be Knicks fans or something like that." He's like, "It's like fascinating to me that you guys are still sticking around." And then he uses an example of like where he's coming from and says like, I've been a Thunder fan through a lot, but I don't understand how you guys can still be Knicks fans or something along those lines." And then immediately I just thought, a Thunder fan through a lot. Like sure, like you've had bad things that have happened, but like to compare it to the Knicks or any other really franchise, like, oh man, I feel like the only reason Thunder fans have gone through anything bad is because of the heights they've reached, like, and that's desirable to most teams would trade places for the Thunder for the past 10 years, like to have the decade they just had. Most teams in the league would trade places, obviously, other than the teams that won rings. Almost every other team would want to trade places. And then going also into this decade, they have one of the brightest futures of any team. So I did kind of talk back to this kid a little bit. I don't want to call him a kid. I don't know how old he was. I have no idea. But I was like, I kind of just laid it out. I was like, man, you have to be, like, the OKC fans have to be some of the most, like, privileged fans in the NBA. Like, for the past decade, OKC fans have to be the most privileged, other than maybe, like, San Antonio. And San Antonio, you haven't been very, very privileged for the past 5 years, Like, better than some teams, you've been a playoff team, but it's really that first half of the decade that was really good to you. You know what I mean? Definitely more than Lakers fans. Lakers fans, the early half of this decade was, I shouldn't say half, middle section of this decade was pretty awful for Lakers fans. I guess Celtics have always kind of been relevant. Even when they had bad talent, not a lot of talent, they still overachieved. They went from Doc Rivers to Brad Stevens as head coach. That's, two really great coaches. Just pretty, good, overall good situations. Maybe Heat fans have had a pretty good decade, but still, I mean, like, you've won rings, so obviously better than the heights OKC has reached. But as far as like with OKC, it's like their team was literally like hijacked from the original city, so they just got a team for like, they just stole a team. I know that the fans didn't steal a team, but still, like, to a certain degree, you have to feel kind of lucky that like the whole situation that went down in Seattle was a weird one. It was an unorthodox one for a team, for a city losing their team, and so there's that just right off the bat. And then you have I believe Sam Presti has been with the Thunder organization the entire time, if not like I'm pretty, because he drafted Durant, so he was with the Sonics before they made the switch. But yeah, so Thunder fans have gotten, and Sonics, I guess, because Sonics, were there for that Durant draft and kind of half Sonics for the Westbrook draft because they were moving, but like they were still technically the Sonics at the time. They drafted 3 MVPs in 3 straight years. That's like the luckiest draft job. Like, obviously he's a good GM, but like, you're lucky to have that GM to draft 3 league MVPs consecutive years, all without the first pick in the draft. It was like second, I believe Westbrook was 4th, I believe, and Harden was like 5th or 6th. I don't remember. But I know that Ibaka was the 24th pick in the Westbrook draft, I believe, which was 2008. And so you got Ibaka, a mid to late first round pick. That's what you used to get Ibaka. And, while Ibaka was playing for the Thunder, he was a good player. He was a great shot blocker. Hadn't really expanded his range yet to become a 3-point threat, really, in those OKC years, especially in the contending years. Let me see. Yeah, Serge Ibaka, 2008 draft, 24th pick. Russell Westbrook was the 4th pick. 2009 draft, first pick, yeah, obviously Blake Griffin. Yeah, James Harden was 3rd pick. Yeah, so I was right. Wait, did I say 5th before? Yeah. Okay, I know that Ice changed it. In my mind, I was thinking 3rd, but I was like, wait, no, I don't think he was that high. I'm pretty sure it was like a. So that's why I said 5th out loud. But in my mind, I first thought 3rd. Just so you know, I'm not. Yeah, I wouldn't lie about that, or maybe I would, even though nobody's gonna listen to this, and I'm not gonna gain any clout by it anyways. But but they use a mid-late first-round pick on Serge Ibaka to get him. He's a good shot blocker. He's defensive presence, rim runner. Rebounder. Overall, I mean, he's like a good piece. He's a good rotation player. But they trade him for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. I believe Ersan Ilyasova was also in that trade. But the main 2 names, obviously, that you want to remember, Sabonis and Vic. Ibaka goes to the Magic for those 3 players. So OKC so far, Sam Presti in particular, has taken a mid-late first-round pick, got a valuable rotation player out of that pick. So he picked well, used that player to trade for Victor Oladipo Domantas Sabonis, and Ersan Ilyasova. Ilyasova's seen better days. He's always been kind of on the fringe of like a rotation player. Sabonis at the time really wasn't much. I think he was showing a little bit of potential. I guess I didn't know, wasn't paying too much attention to Sabonis or the Magic back in 2015, 2016, or whenever that trade happened. But Victor Oladipo, I remember him coming out of Indiana. He was the second pick of the draft, and he underachieved a little bit in his first seasons with the Magic, but I think that he was the case that you really shouldn't give up on quite yet. At the time, didn't seem like that bad of a trade for Orlando, or that awesome of a trade for OKC, as it would turn out to be, obviously, because Victor and Sabonis have both turned into NBA All-Stars. So probably better. Both of those players are better than Serge Ibaka is now. Even though I love Serge Ibaka, he's a great fit on that Raptors team, great rotation player. I think Sabonis and Vic probably a little bit better. Even though Vic missed most of the season, but previous 2 seasons, yeah, Vic has been a better player, just overall. So Sam Presti takes this first-round pick, late first-round pick, gets Ibaka, trades it for Sabonis and Victor Oladipo, trades Sabonis and Oladipo for Paul George. So he's turned that mid-late first-round pick into NBA fringe superstar at the time, Paul George. And with Paul George, he gets the largest trade haul in NBA history for one player. He gets Danilo Gallinari, who is like a serviceable scoring wing/4 type player. Like he's a good serviceable rotation player. Like probably on the same level Ibaka is, but very different way. Obviously Ibaka, they're just different kind of players. But still, somebody that you could put in a rotation on a good team. Danilo Gallinari, obviously, former Nugget, former Knick. Been a fan of him for a while. He was in that Melo trade, so I didn't like the Knicks when he was on the Knicks, but you know what I mean. So then you got Gallo and you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Is it Shy or Shay? I hear people say it differently. I believe it's Shay, but it is spelled like you would say it Shy, kind of. You know what I mean? And a lot of people do say it Shy, so I don't know. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, yeah. I'm just going to say Shay. So I think that they got both of those guys out of Paul George. I think that is an all-right trade in and of itself for the future, just because Shai has a really bright future. Gallo's a contributor right now. They've built a winning culture where they're at with what they have, because then they trade Russell Westbrook for Chris Paul, which I think was a great trade for both teams. Probably better for OKC than it was for the Rockets, just because obviously Chris Paul, he's a high usage player, but not to the extremes that Russell Westbrook is a high usage ball dominant player. Chris Paul, the ball moves through him a lot, but he does get people involved a bit more than a Russell Westbrook would. And I think that, people have different opinions on Chris Paul, on his personality, on his leadership ability, whatever. But I think just from what I've seen so far this season, it seems like he's been doing a pretty good job, cultivating the young talent that they have there in OKC, and really building a culture for the future. I think it worked out for them. And they got 6 first-round picks. I forgot to mention that. 6 first-round picks. I know a lot. And what's hilarious to me about this whole situation is so many people were kind of defending the Clippers in that trade, saying, well, it's only, those aren't like really high. Those are all like mid-late first-round picks. Like they're not really that valuable. They're mid-late first-round picks. And it's like that entire trade deal, that entire trade haul, that entire package that they got for Paul George all started because of one mid-late first-round pick. That's what Sam Presti can do with a mid-late first-round pick. I know that he's only done that once, obviously, to that level, but he's been known to draft fantastic. Like, what GM drafts better than Sam Presti? Who has the best of what he gets out of the value of where he drafts. Like, I guess I think the Heat are pretty good at that, but they're more like they sign undrafted players, so it's not really even through the draft. But you know what I'm talking about. I just think that you shouldn't discount all those picks as being, oh, they're not that big. They're just mid-late first round. It's not like these are lottery picks or something. It's like all of those picks and Shai and Gallo all came from one mid-late first round pick. If you trace back all the moves, that's just mind-boggling. That's crazy. That is that is just wizardry as a GM. That is incredible. But they went into OKC just went into the 2010s as the team with the highest ceiling. Like they were like the team everybody wanted to be going into the 2010s, other than maybe the Heat a little bit, obviously, because the decision happened in 2010. But I think most people would probably, at the time, I don't know, the Heat were really hyped up. Either one of them, though. But for the whole next decade, the entire 10 years, Thunder. Because all those guys were still so young. So they went into that decade, the number one team that you would want to be, and they're going into the next decade, kind of on that list too. Who else would you pick going into 2020, into the 2020s decade? Like, I feel like it's got to be them. They have, or maybe the Mavericks. is a pretty good choice too. I don't know who else. Obviously, I'm going to be sticking with my Nuggets, and I think that the 2020s seem like they're, especially the first half of them, I think they'll be pretty bright. But obviously, speaking non-biasedly, OKC and Mavs probably have a better, just from a prediction standpoint, they probably do have the better next 10 years. Obviously, OKC has had things to be sad about, with them never winning a ring, even though they probably should have with the talent they've assembled. The James Harden trade, but every team has had an awful trade at some point. But that was a pretty bad one. Not very good GM work on that one from Sam Presti. Good GM work from Daryl Morey, which is just kind of funny to say. People always want to praise when those moves happen, but I feel like there's so many things in the NBA, so many moves like that are so fluky. Like they could go either way. That it's like if you play that whole scenario over again, like a couple tiny variables change or something, and it could end up completely different. And it could be completely flipped, like, and you think Sam Presti was the genius and Daryl Morey, you know what I mean? I feel like those guys, they obviously know what they're doing more than the average person, for sure. But I think that so much of what they do, they're taking risks, and it's just in this timeline that some of those risks turn out profitable. And then, so the James Harden trade, but they still got some assets out of that trade. Obviously, they lost it, but it's not like they completely destroyed their team with it entirely. They got Kevin Martin out of it, who serviceably was approximating what James Harden was doing for them. Obviously, James Harden became a superstar as soon as he got to the Rockets, but in OKC, Kevin Martin really put up the numbers Harden was doing. I think he did his job. Obviously, he was on the older end, so he wasn't really what they wanted for the years to come. But they got Jeremy Lamb also, who actually turned out to be a pretty good rotation player. I don't know really for them. I can't really remember any Jeremy Lamb years. What he really did for OKC. But in Charlotte, for sure, with his former UConn teammate Kemba, and Indiana, I think he's been a good rotation player. And then obviously the one thing that Thunder fans and probably other people too, if you're listening to this, have been waiting for me to say, is Kevin Durant leaving and going to the Warriors. Obviously, it's a big oof. It's not a awesome thing, but you gotta just remember, it's like. You had like so many people would still trade places with you, so many teams. And like all that did after KD left was put you into a still relevant position. Like you're still a relevant team, you're still in the NBA playoffs. Russ won the MVP that year. Obviously not what you wanted exactly, but you're still in a better position than over half the league. You're in a Western Conference playoff spot. Western Conference. That's more than most teams could ask for in a given season. And then you got Paul George, and now you're where you're at now. So I would say it all worked out. Obviously, is this the best scenario that the Thunder could have had in this decade? No. But as far as acquiring assets go, I don't think you could have had a better, other than the Harden thing, I don't think you could have had a better decade. Or better 15 years, ever since you started. You've been a relevant team since you became a team, since your inception, since you became, the Oklahoma City Thunder. You've been relevant, and you've had good talent. You've made the finals. I'm just saying, like, it's just a little bit sad to see somebody say that. Somebody say, "Oh, I've been through a lot as a Thunder fan." It's like, oh, I know a lot is relative, but relative to most teams in the NBA, you really haven't been through that much. And obviously, but the things that they have been through seem colossal. But it's like you only were able to go through that because of the position you were in the first place that people are envious of. You know what I mean? So it's like you were so great that you had that big of a thing where you lose a Kevin Durant or you lose a James Harden in a trade, or you lose in the Western Conference Finals or you lose in the finals against the Heat, and you give up the 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors. Like you were in those positions though, you know what I mean? So I guess just be grateful for that. I would love for the Nuggets to make a conference finals. Hasn't happened since 2009, and that was the only time we've won a playoff series until last year. So I guess another thing, obviously a really big question about the bubble is who's going to come out on top, and we want to hear predictions from people on that. I think I've said this for a while now, basically ever since, Kobe passed away, that I wanted the Lakers to win it. Kind of more as, obviously I want the Nuggets to win. I'm a Nuggets fan. I want the Nuggets to win every year. That's, what fans do. But like more of a realistic prediction or a more realistic ideal, what I want to happen. That's, also, it's a blend of like a prediction of what I think will happen and what I want to happen. I think the Lakers would be a nice moment in history for them to win this year. And honestly, I've never been the biggest LeBron fan. Obviously, kind of always cheered against him being a Melo fan, in the little bit of a rivalry that they had. But I kind of want AD to win the Finals MVP if they were to win. Either way though is fine. LeBron getting 4 rings, 4 Finals MVPs, be pretty cool too. Not a big LeBron fan though, and I really like Anthony Davis, and I would like if he were to win a championship, win a Finals MVP before he retires. Obviously, he's got a lot of time left, but I just kind of like him. Kind of want to see where he goes down all time as a power forward slash center. He's based. I mean, years going forward, he's probably going to be playing center, but I don't know. He's kind of in history, where are we going to put these guys? You know what I mean? Like, I think he's probably going to end up being talked about as power forward all time, just because he fits that mold more of like history. Anthony Davis is another interesting conversation piece because I think he's one of those cases. Him and KD are both kind of like this to me, where it's like they have the tools to be like the greatest of all time. Or Shaq. Shaq's another good example. KD has the tools to be the best scorer in the history of basketball, the best forward. He has the physical tools to be as good as LeBron, have that kind of a legacy. He can defend at a pretty high level. He's a good passer. He's a solid playmaker. He obviously has the scoring going for him. More than like he has an ISO game. He has range. He can shoot from anywhere on the floor with ease. He can put it on the floor, get to the rim, get to the line. Like he's just overall the total package as far as an offensive player goes, and he does it on the defensive end as well. Not obviously not at the same level, but at a level that is comparable, like a level that you're gonna not lose sleep over. It's like, yeah, he's a pretty good defender. He's a decent defender. He has that package going for him, but he's always seemed, obviously, people say this all the time with him choosing the Warriors and stuff. He's always seemed to he lacks like, obviously I don't know him as a person either, so don't take this as like offense or like, I don't know, like that I'm talking bad about KD or something, just what it seems like from a basketball fan. It seems like he really has lacked the heart or the drive his entire career to be that level of player, to be that best player that he can be, to really like take over the moment when the moments come. It seems like he's always kind of taken the back seat on those. He doesn't really seize those moments, or with the Warriors thing, like he goes in, he takes the easy way out in a sense. And I know that I've heard his argument against that a lot, where he says like, people say I took the easy way out. Obviously, it wasn't easy. It's not easy to win a championship. It's like, okay, but you've had it way easier than most championship teams have had, or most contenders have had. Like, you can't say that that wasn't easier to do than with the Thunder. Like, you did it twice, and you almost swept the playoffs in 2018. I can't remember which year, either 17 or 18. One of those years they went 16-1 in the playoffs, and the only reason he was able to do it is because of the CBA, the salary cap. All of the money for the salary cap was added to the books in 1 year instead of stretching out the addition over multiple years. And so it went from the team like the Warriors not being able to sign Kevin Durant to them totally being able to sign Kevin Durant. You know what I mean? And that's just created this incredibly weird offseason and weird timeline that we ended up living in. That's just the way it went. But getting back to that, and with AD too, like he has the physical tools to be the best power forward of all time. The guy there to beat is Tim Duncan. That is, and I think it's Bleacher Report. Some place. I was looking at lists of like best power forwards of all time. I just cannot take a list seriously if you do not have Tim Duncan number one on an all-time. Like, what more does the guy have to do to be considered the best power forward of all time? I think a lot of people want to use like KG or Karl Malone, namely, like, or are the two main ones probably that usually get put over him when it does happen. It's like, we know KG in a different time. I've heard the argument if you take Tim Duncan out and put KG in his spot, KG would have had just as good a career as Tim Duncan. He would have won the same amount of championships and everything if he was in that Spurs culture, if he was in that same situation. Which I don't know if I agree with that, because so much of what made Tim Duncan's career what it was his personality with the Spurs culture, with Pop, him shrinking himself so much, not caring about his stats, not caring about his legacy, not caring about him as an individual player or his individual accolades, him just wanting to win and to be able to build a winning team around him. Like, he's just such a selfless player, which I'm not saying KG is selfish or anything, but Tim Duncan is so much on this side that's like almost every other player is not the same type of thing. You know what I mean? It's not, it wouldn't have turned out the same way. I just don't believe that. On the court, as a matchup, KG versus Tim Duncan playing against each other, who's better? They're both really good. they both have really good skill sets, but we're not just talking about that. We're also talking about the legacy and what they've accomplished and things. But I think I might take Tim Duncan still, just because he has both. Like he's got offense and defense. KG might be the better defender, which is I know nuts to say because Tim Duncan is also considered one to be the he might be the best defensive player of all time. But offensively in the post, he can hurt you so many ways. He's a little bit bigger than Garnett. I just think that in a matchup between the two of them, if you played it 1,000 times, Duncan might come out on top like 550 of them. Like I think he might be have the slight edge, but who knows about that. But with AD, he is, I think, unarguably. I don't know how you could put anybody else. I don't even know who else you would put up there. He's the best rim runner in NBA history. Like who else? Who else rolls to the rim and catches lobs the way he can? I think some people might say just because of recency bias, maybe Giannis. But I think AD is just a different kind of rim roller, like a rim runner. Like I think that they're just built. It's just a little bit different. I think he has a little bit better of the hand-eye coordination when with catching lobs, putting them in, just being able to do crazy things like that. Maybe like a Stoudemire might be somebody that other people bring up with the Suns in his heyday. But yeah, I honestly don't really know who else. Sean Kemp, Blake Griffin, but I think both of them were like spectacular rim runners. Like they would, because they could jump so high and everything. But I think AD is probably, with his length and everything, just everything put together, I think he might be a more reliable one. But you put that on top of him being, he's like the perfect tweener size of being like a Swiss Army knife of a defender. Like he has the height and length to be an elite shot blocker, and he is, and he has the speed and mobility and length, wingspan, and everything to be a on-ball perimeter defender. His speed and agility to stay in front of quick guards. He can guard basically 1 through 5, and you'd be comfortable with it. Like there's not many guys. I think KG is another guy you can say that about. Tim Duncan, obviously, not as much. So I think that's the best argument against KG versus Tim Duncan. But versatility doesn't always necessarily mean the better defender. You know what I mean? Tim Duncan is probably a better post defender than KG is. KG is more versatile. But AD really has that shot blocking ability inside. He can guard 1 through 5 on the perimeter, on ball. He can guard off ball tremendously. He has great awareness of backdoor cuts. He has arms that can plug up multiple passing lanes at a time. Like he's built. He has the skill set to be just so good. And on top of that, on the offensive end, he has guard-like abilities because obviously, you probably heard the story. He was a lot shorter in high school. He grew up playing point guard, had this growth spurt, started playing center, but he still retained that mobility, that agility, the guard-like skills that he learned before. So he is a tremendous player, going on, dribbling. Like he's such an interesting player because I think you could say probably the same thing about LeBron a little bit, but AD even more so, I think, just for the rim running ability. He can run either side of the pick and roll. Like it wouldn't be ridiculous to have LeBron set the screen and have AD be the ball handler. Like that could work. I think that would be a funny thing for them to do every once in a while. I think they have a couple times actually, but obviously it works better the other way around because LeBron's a better passer than AD. AD is a much better rim runner than. I should probably use much in both of those sentences, but he's a better rim runner than LeBron. AD has all of that, and he has the jump shot, 3-point ability. He's capable of stretching the floor. He has passing vision. I kind of already touched on that a little bit with the pick and roll thing, but just ability to handle the ball, pass the ball, agility to rim run and guard 1 through 5, and he has an array of moves, spin moves, stuff inside. He has a post game, which obviously isn't used much anymore, but it does exist. He just has everything to be. He's like a cross between KG and Tim Duncan, and maybe a little bit of Amar Stoudemire thrown in there, just because he's like the rim runner of Stoudemire, probably even better though. And then he's got tools from Tim Duncan and KG. He's just like a prototypical power forward. Obviously the game is changing, and he's becoming kind of more of like the ideal center to have in the league today. He just has the tools to do it. He just doesn't seem to. I don't want to say he doesn't have a high work ethic. He probably does. He probably has a higher work ethic than I do. But I'm just saying, like compared to Jordan, compared to even Giannis. Think about how much Giannis has improved. Obviously, AD has improved a lot too, but Giannis just has this drive that you can totally just see all the time when he's in the game. He's just like has his heart and this drive to want to win, to want to be better, to want to improve, to want to be the best that he can be. He's competitive. Like, he has all these things, just at another level. If you just took what Giannis had on the mental level, like the Mamba mentality, like things that he learned from Kobe, kinda, and that type of mentality, if you put that in AD, I just think AD would be not far, but the clear cut better player than Giannis. Which right now, that's definitely a toss up. Like a lot of people would probably say Giannis. AD just has the tools to be better than Giannis, and if he had that drive, I feel like he would be. I feel like that's what's missing, and I haven't heard this argument from anybody before. It's just something that I've kind of felt. But yeah, just all in an all-time kind of sense, AD has the capability, he has the total package. He has the tools, the skill set to be better than Tim Duncan all time. But it's like, does he have the heart, the drive, the competitive nature to get to that level? And that's something that I just really want to see unlocked. I think it would also be really cool to see him go back to Chicago. You know, he's from Chicago originally. I think it would be cool to see him go to Chicago at some point in his career after this Lakers thing. Kind of see him win a championship there. It would just be cool, just from a NBA fan standpoint. But so I think I'm going to wrap it up a bit, kind of listen back to it maybe a little bit, maybe speed it up because I have a lot of little breaks in here. I might speed it up to like 25% faster. But yeah, that was the first time me sitting down and just recording something, so hopefully that went okay. Also, I wasn't expecting to do it until like right when I did it, so I didn't have anything prepared or anything. I just kind of talked. So yeah, hopefully that went well. Maybe Jacob or somebody will listen to this, but I don't know. This might be lost forever. Hello, and thank you for listening to the first edition of whatever this is. The LoJoWo podcast, I think, is the name that I'm going to be running with for now, kind of, just for reasons because I lack any other better ideas for now. But, you know, might make changes the more this goes on. But yeah, there's a couple parts in there that, when listening back, I felt like I should probably add on to a little bit. Like when I was talking about Denver Nuggets players, I didn't even mention Michael Porter Jr., which is obviously a really big, piece to the team, and I'm looking forward to what he can contribute in this playoff run. Looking forward to his future. I think he has really great potential. Obviously, with Mike Malone, it's kind of been hard for him to earn his playing time on such a deep team and with kind of an old school style coach. Yeah, also Mason Plumlee. I know he gets kind of memed on a little bit, but I think he is a really solid backup center, especially on the defensive end, and he's a good, solid rim runner. I realize I've been using the term rim runner also a lot in this podcast, but, you know, it is a real skill to have in the NBA, especially today. And I think Mason Plumlee does do a pretty good job of that as a backup center. And, yeah, so both of them. I don't know who else I'm really forgetting. Obviously, Juancho Hernan-Gomez and Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt are all three players that I kind of had an affinity for before. You know, I loved all my Nuggets, but, you know, they moved on to the Timberwolves in that trade. We got back Keita Bates-Diop, which I'm actually kind of excited for. He seems like a really good 3-and-D piece to add to the team. But yeah, I'm talking kind of quieter in this one, so I think I'm going to probably have to amplify this audio file a little bit more. I'm recording an outro right now. So this was recorded after the podcast that I made and also after the intro that I recorded earlier. But it is actually currently 1:07 a.m., and so it's actually July 19th now on Sunday morning. And so I'm talking kind of quieter because my wife is actually asleep because obviously it's really late. But yeah, I thought I was going to kind of post this earlier today, but I kind of started looking at it and, you know, editing it a bit, and then also had other plans and stuff to get to today, so I kind of let it sit for a while. So I'm kind of doing it now, and yeah, I'd like to put this up here pretty soon. I think I'm going to make a new YouTube channel to put this on. I don't think I've ever even uploaded a YouTube video before, but yeah, this is just going to be the beginning of a nice adventure that I'm glad to have anybody join me on. So I guess thank you. I don't think there was anything else I was going to add. Actually, I think there was. I just can't think of it right now. You know, obviously you think of it when I listen to myself talk, and I'm like, hey, idiot, you should have mentioned this, or, you know, whatever. But it's not too important. I will definitely get, obviously, more polished and articulate, you know, with this stuff as I do it more. So thank you guys for listening, and farewell.